coming to the Shrewsbury Public Library for what promises to be a wonderful program. Feasting with Your Instant Pot with Liz Barbour. Liz is an author, a cook, person who demonstrates cooking, and a gardener, right? That's what it says on the website. So, welcome, Liz.
Thank you for coming tonight. As Priya mentioned, I do these programs regularly. I do them all over Massachusetts and New Hampshire. I'm actually going to go down to Barnstable on the Cape tomorrow, and then up to Topsfield the next day. I go all the way out. I was recently in Chicopee, Mass, and then back in New Hampshire. So traveling all over, teaching these programs to libraries, but also to a variety of nonprofit groups. If you belong to a women's club or a garden club, or if you have a wellness group at work, this is the kind of program that programmers are looking to bring in to get people interested in cooking at home, and especially to be using these new contraptions and things that have come on the market. You're welcome to go to my website. At the end of class, you're going to get recipes for this evening, which will have my website information. If you want to get notifications of where I will be, I do send out a monthly calendar, although my calendar on my website is completely up to date, and I'm booking all the way into 2020. So you can see if a local library has contacted me and has me coming back in the future. As Priya also mentioned, I did recently publish my first cookbook called Beautifully Delicious Cooking with Herbs and Edible Flowers. I am actually going to use herbs and edible flowers this evening. But the book is a nice collection of my favorite recipes. I am a gardener, but you do not have to be a gardener to use the book. I actually focused on herbs that you can buy at your local Market Basket year-round. I shop exclusively at Market Basket, so you can see that the ingredients here are ingredients that anybody can purchase without running from one store to another. However, if you are somebody that maybe you don't have a full garden, but you do have some plants in pots, you've got some marigolds, or maybe you planted some chrysanthemums, those are all edible. So things that you already have on hand, you may not realize are edible, and there is a list of those. The recipes, I really tried to create recipes that could be recreated by any home cook, and that, knowing that a lot of us are cooking for one or two people at home, oftentimes you have leftovers, and the leftovers can go on for days. After like the third day, nothing really looks appetizing, or you've just had enough. So what I tried to do was give you variations to these recipes so that you could take the leftovers and add one or two ingredients to them to make a different recipe. So you're not eating the same thing over and over again. So this recipe is a great example. This is a wonderful honeydew melon salad. I make it with lime and cilantro, but you could use mint or basil if you like. And with the leftovers, you could just put them into a blender, add a little tequila, and you have a little something special. Yeah, you see? Now, I don't always recommend that you add tequila to all of your leftovers, but a little shot on the side couldn't hurt. Some of us have the Instant Pot, and we've done the first water test, and maybe you've made rice or maybe one other thing. And then it just, it's a learning curve, and we have a lot of things in our lives that we have to, learn every day. So here's another thing. You may have an Instant Pot that's still sitting in the box after months of having received it. That is very common. Yeah, that happens. I think that there are a couple of things that we all need to kind of get past. Number one, an Instant Pot is a brand name. It's a very clever brand name, because when you get one of these pots, you think, oh, the food is instant, just what it says. So we'll talk about the timing of working with an Instant Pot. The thing to note, though, is an Instant Pot is an electric pressure cooker. There are many brands of electric pressure cookers out there. The Instant Pot is one. They all function basically the same. So the lessons you're going to learn tonight can be applied to your other brand of an electric pressure cooker. All right. The other thing is, right off the bat, this is not your mother's or your grandmother's pressure cooker. And I think people get very afraid that if I do something wrong, it's going to explode. Well, I will tell you that the company, I know this company in particular, has made very sure that it's very rare that something like that happens. Okay? Because the machine, it is all computerized. It has its own brain, and it will shut off, or it has other ways to turn off the functions so that that just doesn't happen. And we'll go over those too, because I think it's important you understand those to reassure yourself that this is a very safe machine or very safe piece of equipment in the kitchen to be using. Okay? Even to the point of I will program it so that it can get going when I'm not home. All right? So that hopefully will reassure you. We're going to do 3 main recipes. I tried to give a variety so that you could see, the different types of things that an Instant Pot can do. But of course, I can't touch on all of them because there are so many. So what we're going to do is, as I go along, I will be starting the different recipes so that you can then will be eating at the end of class so that you can really get a sense of how quick these things will happen. So there are 3 phases of the cooking time within your recipe, okay, in the Instant Pot. So the first phase is getting your pot and the contents of the pot up to high pressure temperature. All right? Now, of all the phases, that is the one unknown, and the one that at first will make you crazy because you're going to try to figure it out. But I will tell you, on average, it's pretty much the same for almost every recipe. It has been my experience. And where it varies, we will talk about that. So the first phase is getting this heated to high pressure. So what does that mean? So when we cook something on the stovetop, say I'm going to make a chicken dish for you tonight. And when I put it on the stovetop, if I bring it to boiling, okay, that temperature is 212 degrees. Even with a lid on it, it's the same boiling is the same temperature. Now, when I have a pressure cooker, the pressure cooker is completely sealed. There is nothing escaping. There's liquid in there. There's space to be filled, and it forms a pressurized container. That pressure, which we do not want to release, we want to keep the pressure, goes up to 245 degrees at high pressure. That's the temperature that this needs to reach to get to the second stage of cooking. All right? Now, how long does it take to get to that stage? This is where it all depends. It depends on the size of the pressure cooker I'm using. This is an 8-quart. It will take longer because there's more space in here to bring to pressure. These each are 6 quarts. They'll take a little less time. When we are getting it to that first phase, right? Remember, we have to reach high pressure for the second phase of cooking to begin. The variables are, we mentioned the size of the container. Takes a little bit longer in a larger one. The other variable is what temperature are the ingredients that I'm putting in it. So, say tonight I'm going to do chicken. The chicken is coming out of the refrigerator. Okay, it's been at 35, 40 degrees internal temperature all day. Put that in there, that's going to take a little bit of time to heat up, right? What if I forgot to take my chicken out of the refrigerator? Instead, I pulled it out of the freezer. Now that's much colder. Can I do it from frozen? Absolutely, you can. It's just going to take a little bit longer to reach stage 2 of heating. Are we all together on that? Do you see what I'm saying? The temperature of the food that you put in there will help to determine how quickly this heats up. Now, I often love to make polenta in here because polenta is one of those things on the stove. It takes 40 minutes of constant stirring to do, but you can do it in here without even touching it. If I put hot water in with my cornmeal, it takes less time to heat up than if I put ice water in. That's an easier way to understand this. All right? And of course, some foods that are more dense will take longer than others. So that's something to think about. But those are the main variables that would influence the first stage of heating. I think it generally takes, in my experience, between 10 and 15 minutes to reach high pressure. Okay? So you've got to add that to your total cooking time. Now, the next phase is the actual cooking time that your recipe says. Your recipe author is telling you that, for example, our chicken dish will take 10 minutes at high pressure. So once it reaches high pressure, and I'll show you what the machine is going to do, then you have to add 10 minutes. You're going to set a timer here, and it will count down the 10 minutes. So 15 minutes to start, to get up to pressure, 10 minutes to actually cook at high pressure. So that's 25 minutes. And then we have the third phase, which is releasing the pressure. Many of our recipes will say natural release for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Then you have to add that to that 25 minutes. So are we all together on that? The three, okay. And we'll go over that again and again, just so it's really, you're going to be ready when we get done.
But how do you know when it's hit that temperature?
You're going to see it.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not going to. All right, go on home. No, you're gonna go out of here being very confident and ready to go into your first dish. I would recommend you recreate what I do for you tonight. Okay. All right. So let's get our first one going because we do want to eat at the end of class tonight. So my favorite Instant Pot cookbook author or recipe author is a chef. Her name is Urvashi Pietri. She, I found her because I was looking for Instant Pot recipes. I needed to learn how to use an Instant Pot. I actually went 3 weeks straight using nothing but my Instant Pot. And I am going to challenge you to try that. And you will be amazed at how many things that you don't ever have to go back onto the stove or into the oven. Okay? And that's how you're going to get good. You've got to force yourself to do it. Just give it a shot. She has her website, and this is on your recipe that you're getting. It's called twosleevers.com. Both she and her husband had the bariatric sleeve surgery. And then she became really good at the keto lifestyle. She and her husband lead a keto lifestyle. And so a lot of her recipes and her cookbooks are related to that, but not all. And in fact, you'll find so many recipes that are not keto, but are just darn good. I really think she's one of my all-time favorite chefs in today's world of internet cooking. She is a statistician by trade and then got into the cooking for herself and then began to make videos and to write recipes. And I think it's her background that gives her the precision, the intensity, and very precise and to the point instruction. Okay, so when you watch a video, it's a 5-minute video, gets right to the heart, and then she's done. And then you're like, oh, I get that. She knows exactly how to do it all in a very short period of time. So the cookbook that I really like is the Keto Instant Pot cookbook. She has has an updated version of this. You can get these on Amazon or her website. And many of the recipes are actually available on the website too. So if you don't want to buy the book or if you want to try a few other first, go ahead and get it. She also does an air fryer version. I learned how to use the air fryer from her. I watched her videos. I do an air fryer class. So she's really good at what she does. I will leave this here for you so you can take a picture of it later if it's a book you're interested in or if the library's interested in getting that. I do recommend her stuff. So the first recipe is hers, and I love how she gets this going. She immediately her list is the order in which you put all of your ingredients in. There's no fuss, no muss. So we're going to start right off. She uses a can of diced tomatoes. Now, the other thing that's really important that you understand about using an Instant Pot is it must have at least 1 cup of water or broth or wine liquid in the Instant Pot in order for it to come to pressure. Now, these canned diced tomatoes come in liquid and tomatoes produce liquid, right? We're going to put in chicken. Now, I'll show you the contents of this pot before we get started. At the end, you will see how much water the process extracts from the chicken into our sauce. So we're not going to add any extra water, knowing that our diced tomatoes have a lot of water in them naturally, and so does our chicken. So we don't have to add extra water. It's not like with your slow cooker, you tend to have to put a lot of liquid in there for it to cook properly. This is not the case. The pressure extracts the liquid from, but also cooks the food in a very moist environment, okay? The other thing to remember about an Instant Pot or a pressure cooker is that because it locks everything in, and you will see while this is cooking, no vapors will escape, you are not losing nutrients through steam, nor are you losing flavor. In fact, the flavor becomes more intense. And this is why so many people really love to use a pressure cooker for vegetables in particular, because it makes them so much more flavorful and nutrient dense. Okay. A lot of Indian home cooks use pressure cookers. It's very common to use them on a regular basis. I know my brother-in-law is from Italy. He grew up, his mother only used pressure cookers, and they have them in various sizes. Like we have a 4-quart saucepan and we have an 8-quart stock pot. They have pressure cookers, all those different sizes, to be used on a regular basis. It's just kind of old hat for them. Okay. And this will be for you too. All right. Now we're going to add some ginger. Okay. So this is ginger root. When you are cooking, you want to use ginger root. When you're baking, you want to use ground ginger. Don't use ground ginger when you're cooking. The flavor is not nearly as good. Okay. Now, if you're someone who says, oh, I really don't use a lot of ginger. Well, fortunately, you only have to buy what you need. It's sold by the pound, but you could buy something like this and cut it into 3 pieces and freeze the 2 pieces you're not using. The next time you need ginger, you take it out and it'll be really easy to chop. All right. This ginger root, if I want to, I can take a spoon and run it down the side, and that will take the outside skin right off. But I find sometimes the ginger root is very fresh and that outside skin is very thin, and I don't even bother to peel it. Okay. So we're just going to give it a rough slice. Now, she has a recommended amount, but you may decide, gee, I love the taste of ginger. I'm going to use a little more. And you should feel free to do that. We're not baking. When you bake certain ingredients, it really matters whether you go, do more or less. In this case, it doesn't matter so much with the flavor. It's to your taste. Now, I am going to, because there are so many of us, I am going to double the recipe. Now, what I want you to understand about this particular recipe, she calls this Instant Pot now and later Indian butter chicken. The now and later part means she has made the recipe so that it has a lot of extra sauce because it's so good. You're just going to want to save it. And the leftover sauce, you're going to put it on rice. You're going to put on vegetables tomorrow night. You're going to put it on some, maybe you'll simmer your shrimp in it tomorrow night for dinner and serve it over rice or something like that. So you'll have extra. Now, don't get hung up on this, but because I'm doubling her recipe, I'm going to double the seasoning, but I'm not going to double the tomatoes and stuff because, again, the chicken is going to produce so much liquid. I do want to up the flavor, but not necessarily up all the liquid because the chicken is going to bring more liquid into it. Do you see what I'm saying? Because if I only doubled the chicken and didn't double the seasoning, it would be very bland because it would get more diluted with all of the water. So I'm adding more ginger than what the recipe calls for here. I'm almost doubling it for this addition here. Okay, now the other ingredient here is garlic. And of course, I know exactly where it is right now on my kitchen counter. You're not going to miss it. It's a wonderful addition, but tonight you're going to be fine. And it's all free, so no one's going to complain. Am I right? Okay. All right. So let's get on with the spices. So this is something because I was, with her recipe, she is Indian and I do love Indian cooking and I've gotten to enjoy her recipe. So I went ahead and I bought myself a nice Indian spice box. So I'm just going to show this to you. And what I love about this is now all of my Indian spices, and generally in Indian cooking, in one dish you're using 5, 6 different spices so that I don't have to carry them and pull them, extract them all out from the pantry. They're all right here. I always recommend to people do not only buy your spices at the grocery store. They're incredibly expensive. And we don't know how much they turn over. I go to an Asian market or an Indian market because they tend to turn over more and there's a huge array and they're much less expensive than at the grocery store. I'm sure you must have a market in the area that you can go to. And it is intimidating when you first go in, but people are there to help you and they want you back like at any other grocery store. So ask all kinds of questions. Having said that, some of my spices I get at Home Goods and TJ Maxx, believe it or not. So turmeric has been one that I can get very good quality turmeric at Home Goods for very little money because it's been one of those publicized ingredients that is anti-inflammatory and people love to use it. So I got that. So we're using turmeric and gives it that wonderful orangey yellow color. We're going to use a little bit of cayenne pepper. I'm going to use, I don't want to use too much because I don't want this to be too spicy for your evening. And then we're going to use paprika. Again, another one that I got at Home Goods because I use a lot of it in a couple of my recipes. We're going to use some salt. You can use a kosher salt. You can use a sea salt, whatever fresh salt that you like. And then we're going to use garam masala, which is kind of like curry in that it's multiple spices put together. And, different chefs have different recipes for garam masala. I found mine online just because I had run out and I was like, I need that for another class. So, but they are, you can get a variety of different ones at the Asian market. And then 1 teaspoon of ground cumin. And a lot of, for cumin and coriander, they come also in seed form. I buy the seeds. They last a lot longer, and then I just freshly grind them in an old coffee grinder. And then they're really fresh and vibrant in their flavor. Okay, so we've got all of those in there. Okay, and then we're going to add our chicken. Now, she often uses boneless chicken, boneless, skinless chicken breast. I prefer the thighs. I like the thighs because I find them, number one, they're less expensive, but number two, I find them to be much more flavorful, and they have the fat still attached. And fat is flavor, and fat is satiating. We have spent 50 years or so cutting the fat out of our diet. And guess what? We all got fat. How did that happen? If that was really true and we cut out the fat, we should all be thin. So I'm putting the fat back in, and I've lost 25 pounds. So I'm going back to a diet my grandmother would be familiar with. I started out just actually eating only 3 times a day. Whoop, there's a good new concept for a lot of us because we've been told to eat 6 small meals a day. I remembered my mother yelling to me, do not eat a snack before dinner, you'll ruin your dinner. And before dinner meant any time after school. Or if I said, I'm really hungry, and then she'd say, well, then have an apple. That's not really what I had in mind. Well, you're not getting anything else. And guess what? I didn't eat the apple, and I waited till dinner, right? There's somebody I was reading the other day said, if you think you're hungry between lunch and dinner, if you're hungry enough to eat a pork chop, then you're hungry. But if you think about eating a pork chop at that time and you're like, oh, I'm not that hungry, then you're really not that hungry. Because hunger comes in waves. We can just move on through the hunger. So anyway, I'm using more flavorful foods that have more natural fats on them. And so we're using the boneless, skinless chicken thighs. You can use the thighs with the bone in, and that will give you a lot more flavor because of the bones in here. But that would be awkward for me to be serving to you tonight. So whatever works best for you is fine. Okay. And now I'm just going to stir this all around to cover the chicken, and we're all set to go. Okay, so now it's time to get cooking. So here we go. So every time, are you ready? Yeah, she's ready to jump in. Okay, so things you must remember to get this started. Now this is where your first mistake might happen. Oh no. Your first mistake might be that you forgot to make sure that there was enough water in here. But if you follow your recipes, it should take that into account. So you should be covered there. Now, you have to remember every Instant Pot. First of all, I should say, you must cook in this. You cannot cook without this insert, and it comes with your Instant Pot. Oh, and you found that out. Yeah, I did too once because I poured the water in thinking I had the pot, and it just comes out the bottom. Didn't ruin it.
No, it didn't.
And I wasn't cooking. It was the first step. Pour your water in. And I was like, oh, God, I thought I had put this in. So you'll know right away if you've made that mistake. So the second thing is that with your Instant Pot comes your pressure ring, okay? This silicone ring. You see mine is blue. This one is red. Over time, I have replaced mine because the ones that come with your pot is clear.
Oh.
And guess what? I have forgotten that it wasn't in there and got everything going. And I'm like, gee, it's not coming to pressure. What happened? What happened? And then I, stopped it, lifted it, and realized I hadn't put the ring in. So that's why I bought the colored ring. So I'll always see the ring in the lid. It's just, something that helps me. The other thing you could do is you can get colored rings and you can say, well, the red ring will always be for spicy dishes or dishes, that have a lot of flavor in them. And the blue ring will always be for my cheesecake that I love to make and my vegetables that don't have any scent or whatever. You can look at it that way. They come in a variety of colors. They're inexpensive. Just make sure you're getting it for the correct size of your Instant Pot. Okay? All right, so we want to make sure that ring is in place. Now, what you're going to see, and I'm going to show you on this lid because it's easier to see. So your lid has a little button. You can see it, it's pink. And before it comes to pressure, it is down inside. Once it comes to pressure, it pushes up. Okay, that's one of the indicators that it has reached high pressure. All right. Now on the back of it is a little rubber gasket. All right. You don't have to do anything with this button. It would all happen naturally. But here's what I want you to remember, and you're going to see it with all of these as we get this heated up. That little rubber gasket, once this is at high pressure, it seals. And no steam or anything will come out of your Instant Pot while it's cooking, if you've got everything set right. But as this little button makes its way up, it's actually pushing steam out. So you will see steam come out of this right before it reaches pressure. That may be your first panic point. It was mine, because I thought, it's not supposed to do it and nothing is supposed to come out. What's happening? And then I realized, now I know what's happening. So I wanted to warn you. You're welcome. Because I can see it. What's that? Now you know. You're going to say, you're going to say to somebody in the kitchen, don't worry about that, because I know exactly what that is, right? Now, the other thing is that you have, this is your pressure valve. So you will either, your release valve. So it will either be on venting, which means you've not sealed it. And some things you do in a venting mode, like if you're making yogurt, it never comes to pressure, so you can keep it on venting the whole time. But in order for it to come to pressure, you must put it on sealing, okay? If you don't put it on sealing, as it's trying to reach pressure, you're going to see steam is just going to keep coming out and coming out and coming out. And you can be like, when is it going to come to pressure? Well, it never will come to pressure because you did not seal it. You left it on venting. So you want to always make sure it's sealed. All right? And then I'll talk to you about the natural release and the venting idea. So, sealing ring is in. I am setting this to sealing. Okay, that's my release valve. Now, I'm going to put the lid on. Now, here's where Instant Pot for me really wins. Makes a little noise when I put the lid down. Makes another noise when I close the lid. This is not sealed. Until it reaches high pressure and that little button pops up, you can open it very easily. I don't recommend you do that often, but you may have to, because you may say, something's happening, it's not coming to pressure, and I'll show you how to open it. But once it reaches high pressure, these two little locking pins come out at the back, and you cannot open this at high pressure. So don't be afraid that, if I touch it, it will explode. No. You would have to take a sledgehammer to this to get that to open. So again, they want to make sure it's safe, right? Because ultimately they're liable if there's an issue. So they're going to make every effort, everything to work so that for you, it does not open unless the pressure has been released. Now it's time to turn this on. So we have our interface here. This happens to be a digital read. I paid a little bit more money for, and once we get these going, I'll talk to you about these. But every Instant Pot has preset buttons, and they're preset, they're factory set. They determine what they think would be the average timing for a different type of food. So for example, here it says meat and stew. They have it, I may have reset that, but here I have it at an hour. Cake, they say cakes take 25 minutes. Well, what if I have a cake that only takes 15 minutes? All you have to do is you can hit the cake button and then hit plus or minus to either remove minutes from that time or add minutes to that time. We're cooking poultry, okay? The poultry button see, this is the hard thing about reading upside down. Forage. Huh, I don't see it on this one. Isn't that funny? Well, maybe they're considering it a meat. Some have it as poultry. Well, what I'm going to do is what most of you are probably going to end up doing is you manually set it yourself. And that's very easy to do. So you hit, on this one it says pressure cook. And then it says 7 minutes, but we wanted it 10 minutes. So I'm going up to 10. Done. Okay, so did you hear it? It did a little beep and it says on now. Okay, so now it's starting up. So what is it doing? This is the first, I can't look, I can't see, I can't open the lid and watch it, right? So here's,
pressure.
yeah, so here's what's happening. Pressure cooker heats from the bottom, okay? So all the heat is coming from the bottom. It's different from a slow cooker, which comes from the bottom and the sides. All right, so this is coming up from the bottom. So pretty soon you're going to start to hear, you'll hear it bubbling a little bit. So it's getting hotter and hotter. And then again, you're going to start to see a little bit of steam coming up. When it happens, I'm going to come behind it and hold my hand so you all can be sure to see it. And then it should take like a minute or so for that to then push that little pressure gasket up. And then it will be at pressure and nothing else will come out. Then what you're going to see is you're going to see this readout begin to count down. It will come up. See, it doesn't say 10 anymore, right? It just says on. When it reaches high pressure, it will say 10. And then it will say 9, 8, 7, and it will begin the countdown. Okay? So it'll be 10 minutes at high pressure. So I guess, see, already I can start to hear this, what's happening in here. So we're working on the first phase of heating. It is the most flexible phase, depending on how much we put in here, how big the vessel is, what the temperature of the food is, all of that. And then it'll reach high pressure. Once it reaches high pressure, no matter how much food you have in there, no matter what temperature it was when you put it in there, it will always take the same amount of time at high pressure. So I could have quadrupled this recipe. It might take longer to reach high pressure, but once it's at high pressure, it will always take 10 minutes to cook. I know, that's another one of those things. It's like, oh, okay. So when we're adding up our time, we're only waiting for the variable of how long does it take to heat up. And then it's always 10 minutes at high pressure, no matter how much is in there. And then it will be the natural release. It will always be 10 minutes at natural release or 15 minutes at natural release. Those two heating timing portions will always be the same. It's the bottom one that will change. Are you comfortable with that so far? Okay, I'm waiting for the smile. Then I know. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, while that is cooking, I'm going to move on to my next recipe, and this is a big concept, but it's where you want to be heading with your Instant Pot, and that's why I wanted to do this. It's called in-pot cooking. So ultimately, the goal is that, great, I can cook this dish and I'll have it, but then I want to serve it with rice. So what, you have to cook the rice on the stove? No. I could have put a little trivet in here, put a little container in with rice and water, put it on top of my chicken and cooked them both at the same time, and the rice would not taste like the chicken. So if I were doing this in my crock pot, for example, chicken and rice, it's not chicken and rice, it's all chicken and rice, right? There's very difficult to separate it, and it's not the type of cooking vessel where it would also cook the rice well at the same time, even if it were in a separate container. At least that's been my experience. So, because then it's in there for hours and hours and hours, and the rice just gets mushy. This rice tonight is going to come out nice and fluffy. We're going to do the rice. I'm doing it in this larger vessel so that I could do multiple things at one time, and so that you'll get the understanding of this. And then this is something for you to practice. There are plenty of videos on YouTube for you to look at, okay? But here's how it goes. So I could cook my rice right in here on the bottom of this vessel for you and then stack other things on top. But I'm going to cook it in its own little container just to emphasize the lesson. All right. Now, if I am cooking multiple things at one time, they do not all have to have the same cooking times in order for it to come out where they all are cooked and ready to eat. So in other words, this chicken takes 10 minutes to cook. I can cook it along with frozen peas. And if I do it properly, the peas will not be overcooked. Now that seems crazy, right? Because remember, this is going to be in here for, almost 35 minutes. And peas just take a very little time. So the key is how do you layer it in your pot? So the first thing I want to put on the bottom is the food that takes the longest, because it will be heated more, right? Because the heat comes up from the bottom. So it will get the first amount of heat that comes up through, and then the heat has to go through it to reach the other items. So then to slow down the cooking of my peas, I want to raise them up off the bottom so that they're highest in the pot. So I do that with, these are trivets. They'll raise them up off the bottom, okay? I can set this on top of the chicken. I could do, here's another thing. I have containers here that have lids. Now these are the fun accessories you could think of buying. When I have this unlidded, the peas will cook faster and they'll be overdone. But if I lid it with a solid lid, it takes longer for them to heat up. So the cooking time then works better with the chicken. Am I explaining that? Okay. These I have bought several of them because I look for ones that have a variety of heights to them. So like one here is slightly taller than the other, right? So these are made for stacking. So I could put fish in the bottom. Well, let's see, rice in the bottom, my fish in this one, and then it's the lid to the other one. My peas in this one, and then cover that like that. And they will all cook at the same time. So it takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of awareness of how long they all take to cook. I found my first good lessons were when I used things that had similar cooking times. And then I kind of worked off of that. Okay? All right, so we're going to do our pot and pot cooking. So the first thing I have is rice. And so I'm going to do 1.5 cups of rice. I'm using a basmati rice. I have fallen in love with basmati rice. And actually, the Two Sleevers website, she has a whole tutorial on different types of rice and when to use them. And it's particularly helpful in a pressure cooker. So the basmati rice, the little rice pieces don't stick together. They cook, but they're beautifully separate when they're done. So we're going to use, I have 1.5 cups of rice.
I must
And-
say, that smells delicious.
The chicken. Yeah, you're starting to smell the chicken?
Really
Good.
yeah.
So that's 1.5 cups of rice in 1.5 cups of water. Okay, which already sounds incorrect, doesn't it? Okay, can you see the steam coming out? I don't know if you can see it past my hand. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so now this is trying to come to pressure. Now, if you're like me, if it seems to take too long, you're going to give this a jiggle. It might work, it might not. But I always try to be patient. I know it works, so it's just me. All right, so 1.5 cups of water, 1.5 cups of rice. Right away, we typically do 2 water to 1 rice when we do it on the stove, right? But water and steam and vapors escape. In this case, they will not. So that's why we're doing it equal 1 to 1.
Did you buy those little pots from Instant Pot or?
Nope, I got them on Amazon. There's even this one. I started following a young woman, and she recommends these. They're all very cute little, and they have their own sealing rings in them. But the only problem with these I found is I couldn't stack all 3 in the regular Instant Pot. That's why I started looking for ones that were a little bit thinner so I can get more stuff in there.
How do you take them out once they're hot as can be?
Oh, I'll show you.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, now remember, if we're putting all the food in containers, there has to be water in here, right? So in the water goes 1 cup. You have to have at least 1 cup for this to come to pressure. All right. Now we can use these Trivets. Okay, this one, every Instant Pot comes with one of these. It goes down on the bottom, and then I stack my little containers on that. Okay, so the rice takes the longest, in that goes. If you don't, for some reason, have a trivet, you can make a sling also. I've also made a trivet by just bunching up tinfoil and putting it on the bottom. It's just lifting it out of the bottom, so it's not sitting on the bottom. But this will help you to lift the stuff out of your Instant Pot. See, now this is making me crazy, right? Oh, it worked.
That's magic.
Completely silent. Now you're going to start to see the countdown. Okay?
No, not
Well,
yet.
doesn't it?
It's not yet.
Yeah. I see. Usually it changes the thing up on top, the icons. The icons change.
It will. It will in just a minute. And you're going to see this start to count down. Okay. So in we have our rice. And now I'm going to do frozen peas. Okay? So the frozen peas, I'm using them frozen so that they'll take longer to cook. All right? And I should have bought the bigger peas. I bought the petite peas, the larger sweet peas would take even longer, but we'll see how this works. Okay, so we're gonna put these on top. Now, the thing to remember in each of your Instant Pot, there is a maximum fill line. I cannot go over that. If I do, it won't come to pressure. All right? Now, the last thing I want to put in here is we're going to do some hard-boiled eggs at the same time. Now, the hard-boiled eggs, typically their cook time is 5 minutes at high pressure, 5 minutes natural release, and then 5 minutes in an ice bath. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm putting this in here so that they're not the high. Remember, the higher up they sit in here, the more in line with the cooking time of the rice they'll be. So I just put a little something in there for them to sit. Okay. So now we're gonna go ahead and seal this up. I've got my sealing ring. I'm sure it's in place. Sometimes just make sure you've got it in place. As they start to stretch, sometimes they come out of sealing, right? So you wanna make sure it's sealed. And then I've got this on sealing. And then I'm just always confirming with my recipe. It says 6 minutes for this. Seems crazy.
Seems crazy. Race in 6 minutes.
It's gonna do it. Well, remember, it's not just 6 minutes, right? Okay, so now we're going to pressure cook. It says 15 because I did it the last time I used this, it was 15. So it remembers the last time. 6, and then let it go. So there are presets on every one of these.
Right.
As I mentioned, they are the manufacturer's interpretation of what an average, in this case, soup or broth, how long it would take to cook, right?
Right.
But I've found that that's rarely the case in depending on what I'm making. And so I'm not even bothering. I could hit the soup button and move it up and down, or I could just go into manual. And oftentimes I'm just going into manual and putting in the number that my recipe says.
Right.
So get used to what that is. This does not say manual. It says pressure cook.
Right, and it explains it in the direct.
Right. So those little subtleties are things that you'll learn about. Now, let's talk about the buttons. And I've got one more thing that we need to cook, but I'll put it in just a few minutes. So these buttons, most of them heat up in the same way. So it doesn't matter which button you use because you are setting the timing oftentimes yourself. So for example, you said it right on the, this guy said, it's a scam. It is a scam.
One button.
So here's the thing. That's where you start to pay the money, right? So this one does everything I've ever wanted an Instant Pot to do. I got this one because it has the digital readout. And I was like, oh, it's got the little icons of the pot with the little flame under it. So, because I can't see when it comes to pressure, but the icon, well then the icons weren't coming up at exactly when I thought they should. So I just stopped looking at the icons. So what I paid another $50 for was the digital icon, the lit up thing. But also I paid for a few new buttons. But here's the thing, those new buttons are a convenience, but I don't necessarily use them the same all the time. So the cake button, for example, it is a preset button, but the cake button heats up the same way that the egg button heats up, that the bean button heats up. It's just that they preset a separate time. Now, having said that, there are a few buttons on here that do heat up differently, and that's why there are different buttons. So here's a great example. The soup broth button heats up in a different way. How is that? So when you are preparing a stock on your stove, you put the chicken in, the vegetables, the broth, you heat it up, and the first thing you do is you bring it to a boil. And then as soon as it hits a boil, you drop the temperature down so that it simmers for an hour, hour and a half, however long you're going to simmer that broth for. The reason you do that is because if I let it boil the whole time, it will stir up the proteins in the chicken and the fat in the chicken, and it'll make the stock really cloudy. Same with a soup. If you're cooking a soup and you're boiling it the whole time, it will come out to be a real cloudy, murky soup. if we were to do it the way you properly do it, where you bring it up to a boil and you immediately drop it to a simmer so that it's just kind of going like this, then you'll have a clear broth at the end or a clear soup at the end. That is how this button heats. It doesn't heat like the regular button, which goes shh and keeps it at the same kind of temperature to keep it even, because it's always trying to keep that at pressure. This will come up quicker, and then it will drop down so that it is much more of a mellow simmer. It will get it up to pressure, but it will hold the pressure differently. Okay. Now, the other button that is different is the steam button. That you can use for vegetables. I've read recipes where people make their hard-boiled eggs using the steam button, or you can do poached eggs in here, which I haven't yet done. I want to experiment with that. But you can do all of those things in here, and that heats up really fast. Because when you're steaming vegetables, think about this. When I get vegetables in there, I don't want them to sit in there for 10 minutes it takes to heat up and then cook, and then I'm not going to do a natural release that could take 10 minutes. With vegetables, you want to get them hot and get them out of there. So that's how the steam button works. So we're going to use the steam for our next one. Okay, what's happening here? Did this?
Start coming up.
Okay. We have completed the first two levels of heating. We have reached high pressure and we have cooked at high pressure for 10 minutes. Now it's time to release the pressure. So most recipes, with a few exceptions, and I'll talk about those, will do what's called a natural release, which means you just leave it alone. Walk away and watch it count up to 10. Because our natural release in this recipe is for 10 minutes. That 10 minutes is a part of the cooking time. I have a lot of people who say, well, what if I just want to get the food on the table? Do I have to do that? Well, yeah, because while it may not be heating it, it's still under high pressure. It's still in heat. It's still cooking. So don't not do the natural release. Sometimes I have been known to forget, and I'll come back like it's been releasing for 30 minutes. Now, in some recipes, it really doesn't matter. On others, it might matter. It would matter, I found out, when you're doing hard-boiled eggs, that, yeah, it matters. You got to get it out of there after 5 minutes. Otherwise, then you've got that, you overcook hard-boiled eggs, which are horrible, okay? So we're going to let this sit. I'm going to have you guys tell me when it reaches 10, and then I'll release what pressure remains. All right? We're going to get our vegetables in here so we can get that started. So in here, now I'm going to be doing for you butternut squash. And the reason I'm doing the butternut squash is because I have fallen back in love with butternut squash since I've had the Instant Pot. Remember I told you that it makes vegetables sweeter? Yeah, butternut squash is the one that I love the most. So in here I have, I bought this wonderful little basket, which I highly recommend.
It's really nice.
I don't know what it's called. I don't know the name of it. I got it on Amazon. You're going to go in, Instant Pot accessories. It has a plastic cover on the handle and little plastic feet. I love it. Put my eggs in here, anything. I don't want my butternut squash to sit on the floor in the water because then it'll just get super mushy. In goes my cup of water. Remember, I have to have a cup in there. In go my butternut squash. Now, I cut them in bigger chunks. I found the smaller I cut them, the mushier they were. So I recommend you cut them in good-sized chunks. But you can experiment with that. Okay? And I'm just pressing them down because I'm very wary of that maximum fill line. So I just press them down. Okay. I've got my sealing ring.
you ever add seasonings with the butternut squash?
I'll add them later.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you could salt the water if you want.
No, I was thinking cinnamon.
We're not going in that direction with
Okay.
that. Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to seal it, or I'm sorry, close it. Put it on sealing. Up.
No? Still says on.
Calm down. It's not instantaneous. The computer is like, oh, wait a minute. I'm coming. Get that lady to calm down in front of me. I'm coming. It takes a minute. That's the thing. But I knew, I was I was just like, definitely, it's sealed. Why isn't it doing that? There is that little moment. All right, now we're going to do steam. And for 6 minutes. Now, it took me a while to figure out how big can I cut the butternut squash so that it steams in the 6 minutes and it doesn't overcook. You're going to play with it. Now, this is where the recipe books that come with your pressure cookers, they're not always to your taste, and with a butternut squash, these are fresh out of the farm stands right now. They're very dense and they're very flavorful. So they do better cooked longer than ones that you're getting in March that have been around all winter. So those are things to take into account. Also, what is the temperature of the squash that you're putting in there or whatever. That may hold together better if it's out of the refrigerator. This was not. Okay? So we're good. This is going to start the countdown soon. Remember that the default for all of these to begin is high pressure. You can go low pressure on these. If you're making yogurt, that button is a preset button. You don't want to cook anything else using the yogurt button because that doesn't cook at pressure at all.
Right.
And it's already built into the computer of the Instant Pot. You follow the instructions and it will go along really, really easily. It's much easier than I thought. Yeah.
Was that a preset 6 minutes for the squash, or did you?
It's just that I had cooked it the last time I cooked it. It remembers the last time I used this was for 6 minutes. Both of them happened to be 6 minutes. Yeah, but it remembered that the last time I did it, it was 6 minutes.
So how do you know 6 minutes is for the squash or broccoli
It's
or whatever?
I no. Like I've experimented and that's been my go-to time. But you may follow a recipe that might say to you, cut them in 1-inch squares and steam them for 4 minutes because they're small.
As a rule, most vegetables steam for 6 minutes.
No, you can't say that.
That's okay.
Right, because little baby peas would not.
Well, right.
Right. And some vegetables, in my opinion, are not even worth putting in here. Asparagus, forget it. They come out way overcooked. Sugar snap peas, I find they're just good steam. It's just quicker to just do it on the stove, depending on how accessible your Instant Pot is or what have you. Now, some things are really great cooked in the Instant Pot. Like I said, I love the butternut squash cooked in the Instant Pot. I love beets cooked in the Instant Pot. Beets, they come in various sizes. They're very dense. They take so long on the stovetop. In here, my experience, again, 20 minutes. And they come out beautiful, perfect every time. I ate so many beets this summer because I learned that this did a great job. I'm also cooking more of my own beans from dry in here. I find them to be much more flavorful and much more consistent than when I would do it on the stovetop. So.
So is there only one temperature? Like, I know you can saute, like if beef stew or whatever.
Sorry.
There's only one temperature, so it's pretty hot.
Right. So thank you for bringing that up. So the other great button here and that separates this from your slow cooker is that you can saute in here. So if you have to brown your meat first, you can do it in here. And yes, it is at that one high temperature. Instant Pot presets their saute button for 30 minutes, but you could put longer if it takes you longer to sear or saute. When I was telling you about putting liquid in here, I did not mention milk or heavy cream because those have a lot of natural sugars in them, and they often will burn at the bottom if your ingredients aren't producing another liquid, right? The other thing to remember is you do not want to use thickeners in your Instant Pot or in your electric pressure cooker at all.
Like cornstarch and stuff.
Cornstarch or flour. So say we're making our beef stew. We don't want to dip the beef in flour first and then cook it because the flour will thicken and then you have a look on your face.
Oh my god, I probably made about 20 dishes in this, and then I made stew last week and it wouldn't seal, and I'm like, what is going on? And then it was burned on the bottom. And
Did it say burn?
no, it didn't. get
Okay, because
that
sometimes it
right.
will say burn.
Yeah.
Burn, 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 burn.
Oh,
Yeah.
And after like stressing over it
Yeah.
for the entire time that it was cooking because it wouldn't seal, everyone came home and I said, it's burned, just eat it. But because I did it like I would do a stew in the oven.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can't do that 'cause for two reasons. One, it will thicken up and then you'll have that problem because again, it's intensely hot at the bottom. But the other thing too is if you did a lot of stew and it's bubble, because it's going crazy in there, if that clogs up the valve, then you're in a whole other kind of trouble.
So 10 minutes.
Is it 10 minutes? Okay, so now, and we'll come back to this. So basically, no thickeners in.
Okay.
When you make a stew, then it's a two-part process. The second part is you open it up, put it on saute so that now it's bubbling. You're looking at it. There's no lid. You're looking at it bubble. Then you add in your thickener,
Okay.
just like you would on the stove.
So do I need to clean out the little rubber valve now just to make sure there's
You should. They all come apart, and you can put everything in the dishwasher. The lids, everything. You don't want to put this in, but there's no computer in this, so you can actually put the lid in the dishwasher. Okay. So this has had its natural release, right? So now I cannot open it still because there's still pressure in there. So I have to get rid of the pressure. So I have to release the pressure by venting, okay? All right, now, what I want you to notice is that this is tipping to the back. Everything on your Instant Pot tips to the back. The idea is that you're not standing behind it, teaching a class. You're standing in front of it. So that's tipping to the back. Number 2, do not put this underneath your cabinets. It will remove the finish of your cabinetry. Okay, I put it on my stove on a cookie sheet because I have an outlet nearby, and then it vents right up into the vent of my stove. Some of you may have an open counter and you don't have a fire
Smoke alarm.
smoke alarm. Sorry, right over there. Although I don't think steam would be an issue, but for some they're very sensitive. So anyway, so that's the thing to remember with that. Okay. All right. So we're at 1 minute over there. This is still reading on. Still working. See, this is where I'm like, is it going to come to pressure? It's getting hot. It's not as hot. It'll take a few minutes. We still have plenty to do here. All right, now, all of the pressure is out, okay? And so this is, I can't tell if the keep warm button is on. I'm going to cancel. Keep warm. It'll keep this warm for 10 minutes. Now, something is, okay, so now this is going to start. We only want a 5-minute countdown. So let me know when this hits 5. Okay. Okay, so now because the pressure is out, I can turn this. And again, when you lift this up, you're standing here, you're going to lift this up so that the steam goes away from your face. Then you're going to turn this and it's going to stay right in there.
I did not know that.
I didn't either.
Walking around with it, like, what am I going to do with this?
I was teaching the class. My first class, I'm teaching the class and I'm walking around with the thing. Oh, I got to put this in. One of the women said, no, you just put it in that little.
It like rolls all around too. Like, I almost chased mine off the counter.
Yeah. Yep. And it's got two sides, so you can put it in whether you're right-handed or left-handed. Okay.
So in other words, you can't take your recipes that you cook with, like, say you have something like, say you're making like a boiled dinner, and you can make it either on your stove or make that in the crock pot. You can't use your recipes. You've got to go to the Instant Pot and that recipe.
Well,
Make it come right.
what you want to do is you want to get comfortable enough where you can adapt your recipes to an Instant Pot.
Okay.
So give me an example.
Like say corned beef and cabbage.
Okay.
Say that you make that.
Right. So, and that I have done. So it's all a question. It's just a timing question because, so that is one of those where the corned beef takes a good long time.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, you can, maybe you're going to release the pressure, open it up, and then put the cabbage in on top of the corned beef for the last 4 minutes. And then you seal it back up, start it. Now, because the corned beef is super hot and the broth that it created is super hot, it will take maybe 3 minutes to come to pressure the second time. And then your cabbage is in there for 4 minutes. And then voila, they come out and they're just fine. So again, you learn. The other thing too, take it from me, before I try something new, I always go to the internet and I look at 3 different recipes for the same type of thing. And then I get a feeling of, oh, this is how they do it. This makes sense to me. So now we're going to cancel. And I have to release the remaining. And that will take longer because it's bigger. All right. Okay. So now it's time to finish this. Tomato paste or tomato sauce. Okay. I know. I'm still gonna be like, I wonder how that happened. Okay. Now we're going to add our butter.
Oh, yes.
At some point.
Aren't you happy to know that butter is good for you now? Has always been good for you?
I've also done that with full coconut milk too, similar, like you.
At the end.
I think that like you're doing right now.
Yes, which is a really nice way to go. Yes. Yeah, and always use the full fat, unsweetened. Yeah. And then we're going to do a little bit of heavy cream.
And that's hot enough to melt the butter.
Yep.
Yet you're handling it.
This is not super hot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it ever get super hot?
Yeah, it depends on what's in there. And it's been sitting open for a few minutes too. And I have very Teflon hands, so. Okay, so then I'm gonna go ahead and add my chicken back in here. And I'm just going to break it up. All right. There it goes, I think.
You can see it too.
Just, I know it can be nerve-wracking, but imagine being me. I'm really like, is it working? Sometimes it doesn't work. I had a class where for some reason it wasn't coming to pressure, and then all of a sudden the ring popped out the side. So what had happened was the ring wasn't seated correctly in the lid, and the pot did exactly what it was supposed to do. So to prevent it from having a problem, it pushed the ring out of one of these side slots. It didn't go flying out. It just popped it out enough to pop this up, and it was fine because it had never reached pressure. It scared the heck out of the two ladies sitting in front. People always, should I sit in front? Oh, yes, sit in front. It's fine. Anyway.
What's the little plastic reservoir thing on the back?
That's to catch the condensation. I had never used it, but I did notice for some of these it really does. Oh, come on. See, this is where the jiggling happens. So you can put that back there to catch any condensation. Yeah, I've never had to use it.
Nothing's ever come out.
Yeah. Okay. We've got that. Now it's time to take our things out of here. Pressure is released. Oh, one of my eggs opened up.
Oh.
All right, so now I have my ice water, my ice bath. You definitely want to put your eggs in an ice bath. Did what it's supposed to do. If only I had been more patient. In these go. One explosion. That's all right.
Any idea what caused that?
Probably it was probably cracked when I put it in there. It might have been cracked. Okay, and then we're gonna go ahead and take out the rest of our okay. So we've got our peas. Whoops. And then our rice. Now I did not put any water in the peas. They did not need that at all. Is that on? Okay, good. Tell me when. Well, it should be, and then we'll do it. See, all falling apart. And it is also the type of rice that I used, right? So if we make like risotto, right? We use a much more the sticky rice produces a lot more gluten, so it sticks together. This basmati rice does not stick together.
Have you done risotto?
I haven't, no. But it's like cooking the polenta would be a really nice time saver. It's different. I mean, if I told maybe an Italian cook that I was doing the risotto in the Instant Pot, they would say, that's not how you do it, because there's something definite to adding the broth little by little. But I would have thought that with polenta too, and my polenta comes out, I like it. So it depends on what you like, okay? Okay, so now we'll start to put things together. The butternut squash should be done relatively soon. We'll get that out of there as soon as it is. Now, I'm just taking these ingredients that were in that Instant Pot and putting them together into like a salad. You don't have to do this. You can do whatever you want with them. But this is kind of, my brother-in-law used to make a salad similar to this, and he would actually serve it cold, which was delicious. So you could cool these down and do this for a daytime salad or side dish, and he would use asparagus and artichoke hearts, and it was really yummy. So we've got peas and our rice. Okay, and then I'm going to add herbs. So this is where the garden fund comes in. And I think herbs make a huge difference in a lot of our recipes. So we're going to add tonight, I'm growing celery in my garden. So rather than putting celery in, I'm going to use the celery leaves. Celery leaves are so often overlooked when we buy our celery. The flavor impact is tremendous. Then I'm going to use, I have lovage growing in my garden, which I absolutely love. It's a very tall herb. Why don't I'm going to put some in and some I'll pass around so you can smell it. And then I'm going to put in some mint. So let me grab some of this. So we'll put, this is the mint and this is the lovage. And so just squeeze them and pass them around. Lovage is, it looks like celery, very tall, but it has a very distinct flavor, and I love to use it in soups and things like that. But I've been using it raw all summer long and really loving that. So we're going to chop this up.
Sure.
There are two.
This one's still going on.
And once these herbs hit the heat of the rice, they're really going to become very aromatic. And then we're going to do, I'm going to do extra virgin olive oil. You could use butter if you like. But if you're going to serve it cold the next day, the butter will solidify. So you want to use the extra virgin olive oil. And use a good one. You know, I have been buying, this brand has been very good, and the Costco brand, the Kirkland brand has been very good also, but there are many others. And then salt. Oops. And just going to toss that together, get all those flavors blended, get those herbs warmed up. Okay, we'll see how we did with the eggs. Okay, so now it's venting right away because it's a vegetable. You want to get it out of there? Oh, I think we did all right. Yeah, beautifully yellow. So I am going to put the eggs on the side. Not everybody likes eggs mixed in, and so if you want, you're welcome to take a little bit of the egg with the salad. Unless anybody object if I mix it in? No. All on board? Good, then I'm going to do it. Because it's so pretty.
Mix it up.
And you know, I'll tell you, this is a great, this is actually a great meal too. Because you've got your vegetable, you've got plenty of greens. You could even add more chopped up greens if you wanted to, because they'll only add good nutrition to your meal. But then you've got the eggs as your protein, and your good fats. So we're going to spread this out. We're going to add our eggs on top.
Wow.
And if you had shrimp, you could do that instead or in addition. Chicken. Then we're going to add some calendula petals. They're like them in the marigold family, but marigolds are a little bit stronger in flavor. And you'll see calendula in a lot of your beauty products, soaps, and things like that. It's a wonderful herb. And then I have a little bit of marigold to add. We're not going to add the seeds. There's a little arsenic in the seeds, so we're not going to add that. Yeah. That's the kind. I'm a nice chef. We're not going to do that. Okay. All right. Whoops. Normally I would put butter, but we'll just use a little. Extra virgin olive oil you cannot go wrong with. And then I think I have a little bit of rosemary salt here. Have to make some fresh rosemary salt now that I'm harvesting all of my herbs.
How do you make rosemary salt?
So my friend does it where she, in a food processor, she pre-chops up her fresh rosemary, and then she'll process it with like a kosher salt or something just to blend everything together 1-to-1. She does. I had read a recipe where it was 2 salt to 1 rosemary. So, you know, it's up to you. I like the more intense rosemary flavor. I'm also going to make herb salé, which is salted herbs, and you just take fresh herbs and layer it with a mineral salt, and then they'll last for up to a year and still be their bright, fresh green color. Why don't we do a little bit of parsley on this, and then I'm going to invite everyone to come up and help themselves. Now, there's lots that you can do with these dishes. The chicken, as I mentioned, the leftovers can be put on vegetables or made with seafood or whatever. I like your idea of the coconut milk, which would be a really nice addition to that instead of the heavy cream, or you could put even more coconut milk in, depends. You could make this into a soup very easily just by adding more broth and that a can of unsweetened coconut milk. Thank you all for coming this evening, for inviting me to your beautiful library, and I hope that you all got a lot out of tonight's program, and that you'll, go ahead and give it all a try, because it's so much easier than we think. It's just, you've just got to get over that hump, and sometimes that, try it for a couple of weeks at a time, and you'll get past, the first bits of fear that you may have. So thank you all, and I hope that I'll get to see you all again.